Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends is an extremely polarizing show among fans and critics. It received a 7.7 on IMDb, which, although I love the show, I think is fair considering it has its flaws. Some episodes, such as Mac Daddy, Good Will Hunting, and Frankie My Dear, are extremely well written, while others lack any sort of plot and feature lazy or confusing dialogue. Despite its hit or miss storyline, I personally adore this show due to the art style and its use of diverse, fun-spirited, and chaotic characters. As such, I will be mostly focusing on the characters for this episode rather than the overall plots and themes. This is High Time Cartoon, and here are some of my favorite characters from Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for future episodes and comment what cartoon you want to see next. Number 1. Eduardo. Eduardo is a purple monster with big pointy horns and a skull on his belt. He is also the most sensitive friend of the group. Despite stating multiple times that he is, quote, not a scaredy baby, Eduardo is often surprised by the slightest of noises and frequently runs away screaming and crying. His creator made him because she was scared and wanted to scare off other people. To that end, Eduardo's seemingly scary appearance is actually just a defense mechanism. Number 2. Coco. Coco has one of the best lines in the entire show. Quote, Coco, 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 Coco. Nearly everyone in the show can understand what Coco is saying, with the exception of the viewer. This could be a metaphor for someone who speaks another language, or just someone who says crazy and outlandish things that most people won't understand until you really get to know Coco. Nevertheless, Coco is able to lay eggs with nearly anything inside, which proves to be very helpful throughout the series. Number 3. Wilt. Wilt is kind-hearted, optimistic, and extremely apologetic. He always uses his manners, he never says no, and he always does what he is told. To quote John Mulaney, you could spill soup in his lap and he'd apologize to you. He usually begins sentences with, I'm sorry, but, and ends sentences by saying, is that okay? Physically, however, Wilt appears to be falling apart. He has one arm, a lazy eye, and while he's the tallest of the imaginary friends, only weighs 130 pounds. Later in the series, we find out that he abandoned his creator, Jordan Michaels, after feeling badly about losing a basketball game. Wilt, despite seeming very happy, is easily taken advantage of and often taken for granted, especially by Blue. Number 4. Mac. Mac is extremely well behaved and often the responsible voice of reason. He gets the imaginary friends out of trouble, and despite being only 8 years old, often has to behave as their parent. Mac has a very strong sense of right and wrong, and avoids doing anything he perceives as bad or dangerous. Creator Craig McCracken said that Mac is based on his 7-year-old self after his father passed away. Number 5. Blue. Blue was created by Mac after he had to throw away his favorite blanket. He is incredibly naive and childish, in addition to being self-centered and ego-driven. He often gets into trouble and fights with many of the other characters. He thus relies on Mac to keep him out of trouble. Although he is mischievous, Blue is clever, kind-hearted, and also very affectionate. Number 6. Mac and Blue. The relationship between Mac and his imaginary friend is one of the most interesting of the series. Despite being only 8 years old, Mac is the voice of reason amongst the imaginary friends. As we briefly see in the first episode, Mac comes from a single-parent household with a mother who is always working and an older brother who torments and abuses him. To that end, there is an argument to be made about imaginary friends being the personality types the creators need to help them through their trauma. Blue is selfish, self-loathing, immature, and carefree. So Mac is forced to grow up extremely quickly. This can be seen as Mac being forced to parent himself, with Blue being his childlike personality. Number 7. Frankie. Frankie is sweet, responsible, hardworking, caring, and empathetic. Her only flaw seems to be her short-temperedness to Mr. Herriman and Madam Foster. Since she was a child, Frankie has lived at Foster's and taking care of all of the imaginary friends. Cooking, cleaning, running fundraisers, doing laundry, driving everyone around, and obeying all of Mr. Herriman and Madam Foster's orders are just a few of her responsibilities. The show doesn't dive very much into her personal life. Some viewers have suggested that she is an imaginary friend created by Madam Foster to help in her old age. Number 8. Madam Foster. Madam Foster is the owner of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. While she is a sweet and loving grandmother, she also has a bit of a wild side and can seem young and even reckless. Her past is full of seemingly impossible stories, including how she spent 47 days in a horse stable and how she got lost inside her own house and survived on nothing but acorns and toothpaste. While technically the owner, Mr. Herriman and Frankie do almost all of the work for the house. Nevertheless, she provides a vital role in the house by helping everyone have fun. Number 9. Mr. Herriman. Mr. Herriman is your everyday man-sized rabbit with a top hat, monocle, a tuxedo coat, white gloves, bow tie, yellow vest, and a mustache. He was created by Madame Foster to be the head of the household at Foster's. He is very strict, very orderly, and does not appear to have a sense of humor. One of the most interesting things about Mr. Herriman is that he despises all animals, including rabbits, whom he calls savages. Whether this is a profound commentary on the nature of society, making us less empathetic towards the less civilized, or just a joke, is up for debate. That's going to be all for this episode, but I will be posting a more in-depth analysis of Goo and Cheese. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing.